Master often talked about respect as being one of the highest qualities of all. In fact, when he talked about the marriage ceremony and people coming together in marriage, he said that two qualities were very important. The first was that the relationship be based on true friendship, because he said that friendship is the highest of all the human interactions, human relationships. He said the other ones are driven by instinct or instinctual desires, instinctual needs, but friendship is a free will choice between two people. Now, higher than that human relationship is the guru-disciple relationship. But in terms of human relationship, that friendship and the other quality that he talked about as being very important in relationships is respect. So that in this sense, he was meaning that you don't become overly familiar with your partner. And that he was saying don't kind of demean them or dismiss them or be short with them, sharp with them. So that combination of friendship and respect is very important. But here Swami has chosen one quality, respect. And what he said is that if we give another person respect, they will give us respect in return. And if we despise them, then they will find ways to express the fact that they despise us. But he's touching on a very deep law here, and that's that the universe is not only conscious, but Master said that everything is determined by magnetism. He said that he didn't talk about it as much as he talked about energy, because he said that magnetism will become the primary relationship in Treta Yuga, whereas energy is the relationship in Dwapara Yuga. And so but the flow of energy creates magnetism. And that magnetism, the law of magnetism, is that like attracts like. So whatever we put out, we attract back from the person that we're interacting with and from the universe as a whole. Master said that our thoughts, we don't create our thoughts. We actually tune in to universal thought waves, one might say. And he often used the analogy that our thoughts are more like radios. Our minds are like radios, and we don't create the radio program. We tune into the radio program. And then, of course, we kind of, depending on how well our station is tuned in, we create distortions in it that are distortions of our ego. But nonetheless, we tune in. One time, Diana, who you all know, and she's got a good sense of humor and also a good sense of dharma. She was walking with a friend, and this friend was complaining and griping about this and that person. And Diana just turned and said, "What station are you tuned into?" And it's so true that according to where we tune in, that's what the universe is. See, that creates the magnetic, the station we're tuned into creates the thoughts, and the thoughts create the magnetic, one could say, milieu in which we function. And so our thoughts will be magnetic, and they will return to us from the people around us and from the universe as a whole. They will return like attracts like, and so they will return to us that wavelength that we put out. It's also obviously the law of karma, and what we put out we're going to receive back. But we think of karma in such long terms, that it's almost like you think of karma, that you put something out and then it takes lifetimes to come back. This is the law of karma in very short situations. So obviously, if you go in and you treat somebody with contempt, let's say you go into a market and you want to buy something and someone brings you something and you think, well, I'll get a good price, and I'll say, that's terrible fruit. Why do you bring me such rotten fruit? I won't pay anything for that rotten fruit. Do you think that person is going to try to give you the very best service he possibly can? Of course not. That person will respond to the kind of energy that you put out to him. And Swamiji was exactly the opposite. He treated everybody from immediately the first connection. He treated them as if they were a good friend of his. And so he used to love to go to, he didn't like big stores. In America, we have huge stores, and it's very impersonal, and you can get good prices, but there's no heart quality in it. In fact, we had a friend who was visiting America. This was many, many years ago, and he was going on a road trip, and after 2 or 3 hours, seeing all the stores and the shopping malls and all of this, he got sadder and sadder. He said, there's no heart in America. It isn't true. There's a lot of heart, but not in the shopping malls. And so, but Swami liked to go into the little stores because he would form a relationship, a friendship with the various people that he would buy things from. But he was always trying, in his own way, just to radiate goodness and kindness. One time we were walking down a street in Los Angeles. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And by this time, Swami was 2010, so 6 years ago. By this time, Swami was getting older, and he didn't walk so easily, but this was one place where we could walk about 4 blocks on one side of the street. It was a little area with stores, and it was flat and easy walking. We could walk about 4 blocks one way and cross the street and come back and walk about 4 blocks the other way and then take the car home. And he used to enjoy going there. But it was wonderful to see him because he would sometimes stop in a shop, and it wasn't like he acted strange or anything, but he would go in and he would immediately start appreciating something. There was a picture frame shop there, and he went into that little picture frame shop and he began asking questions. That's such a beautiful picture frame. Is that solid silver, or is it just the patina of silver? And the man began explaining. He said, how do you choose the woods that, he just was friendly with the person. But so we would walk down the street and occasionally would stop in a shop. If he saw somebody, especially if somebody looked a little sad, he would try to engage that person. Just find something, if he saw an older person. I remember one time he saw a woman, she looked like she was sad, probably had lost her husband, or, she looked lonely and kind of collapsed in on herself like that. And Swami, as he got a little close to her, just said, what a beautiful scarf that is. That's such a pretty color. He said, I feel like when you wear such a beautiful color as that you give me a gift. And she just brightened up, and they began talking a little bit, and he just was being kind. But at any rate, one time we were walking down one side of the street, And we were walking back the other side, and he stopped at this shop because it had very pretty and kind of unique things. And we went in, and the shopkeeper said, "Oh, I was hoping you would come in." Swami said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I was watching you walk down the other side of the street, and there was just a glow of light around you. And I was so hoping that you would come in my shop." And they began, of course, talking, and she then came to all of the programs that Swami gave, and but just that reciprocal treating of a person with kindness and the assumption that everyone is your friend. That song of Swami's, "All the world is my friend," and he actually acted that way. So the vibration that we give out to people, to the world, is exactly the vibration that we get back from the world. Now, if we give out negative vibrations, perhaps others will mask their, if there's a big power difference or something. I remember in fact, it was here in Chennai when we released the movie Finding Happiness. We went to a theater, and I don't know if you remember the situation, but it wasn't just the movie, but they were serving food there. And it was a very kind thing to have happen. But whoever was in charge of the food, serving of the food, was treating the waiters and his staff in a terrible way, shouting. Do you remember? Shouting at them and saying, "Don't be so," it was just, and I didn't even want to eat the food because the vibrations with which that food was being served poisoned it. And so our actions either taint, like bacteria taints water. Our actions either taint the world around us or give healing balm to the world around us. And respect, as Master said, is one of the highest of those kinds of vibrations, because what it really means, I don't know whether however the word is related, but spect is the seeing aspect. And so it's almost like saying to another person, "I see you for who you really are." And when we see someone for who they really are, they feel uplifted and appreciated. Master Swami said that it was difficult living with Master because Master saw you for who you really were. And that didn't mean that he saw all your flaws and your faults, and therefore it was difficult because you felt exposed. Just the opposite. Swami said he treated everyone as if they were a saint. And it was not easy to come up to that level of behavior. But you wanted to come up to that level of behavior because that's how Master saw you. And the same was with Swamiji. He didn't, as Devi said, he didn't demand any respect whatsoever. He almost had a tendency in him that tried to hide his greatness. But everybody naturally respected him because that was the vibration and the wave of energy that he gave out. And so he magnetically pulled out of you that which you received. And that's why Devi telling the story of a man who only talked with him 3 times, but felt that Swami was his very best friend. And it's not like the guy was misperceiving. Swami was his best friend because Swami's magnetism drew out of him the best of friendship. The man who is the director of the answer, the movie about Swami's life. A very, very fine man, Pavan Kal. And that movie we hope that when we come back in the fall, that we'll be able to all see that movie together. It should be. It's going through a series of all of the different film festivals now and getting lots of awards and lots of acceptance, and that's important. But soon it will be released, so we hope to release that. It would be wonderful to all see it together. But the point here being that when Pavan came and first met Swamiji, he came away from that meeting, which was very brief, or relatively brief, just, 5-10 minutes. He said, "I have never felt such love in my entire life." He was weeping because Swami saw him for who he was. I think probably in the world of Bollywood in Mumbai, there isn't a lot of respect that goes back and forth there. There are lots of power struggles and all kinds of that sort of behavior. And therefore, that one could almost say the corporate culture of that is one of competition and disrespect. And so living in that is not a pleasant way to live. But here, him coming and meeting Swami, he felt such love and respect and friendship immediately that it actually changed his life. That first meeting changed his life. And he's never been the same person again. And so we have a deep influence on those around us. And it's very, very important that those who are closest to us and that we're in continual contact with, our family members primarily, that we have respect for them and that we have kindness and goodness, because then the corporate culture of the family will be one of positive energy. That's one of the beautiful things because Swami had that, he magnetized us to have that. And so the whole of Ananda has a great deal of kindness and respect, one person for the other, and everybody feels it. And in that, it's like sunlight on a plant that allows the plant to grow, to become the best plant that it can become. We had, when Devi and I first were in San Francisco, we started an ashram there. And it was quite a large house. And we had about 30 people living with us in the ashram. But there was one man who said something that was very interesting to us. He said, "I always felt that I had a lot to give to the world, but nobody ever seemed to want it until I came to Ananda." And so think of that statement. Everybody that you meet probably feels that they have something to give to the world. And if you indicate to them through your behavior, through your vibration, through the radio station that you attune your mind to, that you want what they have to give, then they will give you their very best. Swami used to take beautiful photos of flowers. He said the secret of taking a wonderful picture of a flower is to ask the flower to show you its beauty. And when you ask the flower to show you its beauty, it's conscious. Everything in the world is conscious. And it will actually respond by showing you its beauty. And that relationship is set up in such a way so that if we live in this bubble of upward moving, elevated thoughts and consciousness and feelings and behaviors, then the universe will respond to us in a similar way, and we'll be able to walk in a little private kind of personal paradise where everyone else may be having difficulties. We're in a little private paradise because that's the vibration, the magnetism that we put out, and we don't need to wait to go to heaven. We can carry it around with us here. We thought we would have a chance for a little while to answer questions if you have them. We'll repeat them if someone has a question, then we'll repeat it for the people on the internet. Kartik?
Very basic question. Many times I find that when I do meditation, I'm able to sit like this. When I sit, my floor is not touching, my feet is not touching the floor. Whereas there are times when I sit on the chair, I don't wear a sock, so I touch the floor and still do that. But is it okay to do it with a bare foot? Is it alright, or is there a need for kind of a material?
He's asking, in sitting for meditation, do you need basically to insulate yourself from the floor, from the pavement? It's helpful if you do, but it's not necessary. These are quite subtle influences. But Master said that there is a magnetism that will kind of ground, and so it's mildly better to have wool as an insulation or fur. You know, that's why yogis sit on a tiger skin or a deer skin. So that can be helpful, or silk. And so I don't think I ever heard anybody recommend man-made material, but natural material seems to have a property that insulates it a little bit. But it's a subtle influence, so I wouldn't make a big thing out of it. But if you can, certainly if you, in your own meditation room, we have a wool carpet, and then we have kind of a silken cloth that we sit on, and then in Gorgon somebody gave us some kusha grass mats, and that's recommended in the Gita to sit on kusha grass, so we do that there. But you have to get up here and answer some questions too.
But now they don't have any questions. Okay, Prasanna.
This is mostly at home. So when I speak, sometimes even if what I say is right, the voice kind of is coarse. Other times it's not, it's soft. So what am I doing that should be done differently so that I'm not at odds with the person that I'm speaking to, and why is the difference in the voice?
So Prasanna is asking, sometimes at home he'll say something in such a way, and even if it's right and true, maybe your voice is harsh, and then it creates a reaction. Remember the story in Autobiography when Sri Yukteswar's mother was visiting? And he started to give some advice, and she said, "Nay, nay, son, I am not one of your disciples." So even Sri Yukteswar couldn't get around his own mother. But so I think, you know, I'll tell you a story that was very, it was a very big lesson for me. Swami called, and he asked our opinion about some decision he was going to be making. And I had a lot of emotion about it because I felt very strongly one decision was right and one wasn't right. And so I started saying, "Oh, Swami, no, this is..." And he stopped me and he said, when you speak with essentially a biased point of view, or with a lot of energy in one direction, I can't hear what you're saying. And then someone else, he asked them their opinion, and they were very objective. And it was my same opinion, but they did it so that he had the space to listen and make the decision. It was a subtle difference. And so when you're expressing an opinion, try to do it in such a way that the other person can take into consideration what you're saying, but then you have the respect for them that whatever they decide, you will accept. It's a subtle difference, but it was a big lesson for me, because I thought, here I was championing this cause, but because I was too emotional about it, it was self-defeating, and he wouldn't listen to what I had to say.
Swami would often talk to us about our voice, and he said that as yogis essentially get more mature, their voice gets sweeter. And he would also teach sometimes singing, but not singing with voice projection, with how to project your voice physically, but how to project the energy of your chakras with your voice. And so he would sometimes tell us that songs need to start in the heart and then come up with that heart energy and be projected. And so if you find your voice harsh, if you can, try to feel your heart chakra and feel that then your voice is coming from that heart chakra, and immediately there will be a tonal difference in how your voice is projected.
Is it that we are taking our parents as a granted so that we are not so kind when we are talking with them, and just trying to extrapolate nothing? So when we are talking to outsiders or strangers we are trying to be more firm and gentler.
That's right.
Whereas when we are with our own relatives or our parents or anybody, we take them granted because they wouldn't really take in the wrong way or this thing. Possibly that is what I believe. But how do we modulate it?
Well, it's okay. Sometimes Ilango was saying that sometimes with those that we're close with, we take them for granted and we act in ways with them that we would not act with strangers. And it's very true. It's a difficulty that people can get into in close relationships where they get into bad habits. And sometimes I don't know what the cause of it is, but sometimes we act as if we can work with a lower vibration in those that we're close with than those that we're not so close with. Partly, we do need to be able to relax and be ourselves with those that we're close with, because otherwise there's always some tension or lack of intimacy. But the key is to be relaxed and normal, so we aren't putting on any kind of false behavior, but also keep the consciousness high. And I don't have a good solution, because it's just such a common problem in human nature. And then it gets, especially parents and children, it gets very complicated because there are control issues and power issues and all sorts of other issues that go on. And as Devi said, even Sri Yukteswar's mother was different. But I don't know if you have...
Again, I'm thinking back to our experiences with Swamiji. And I think part of what happens when people become not wanting to be courteous to each other, it's like, oh, okay, you're always there, it's always the same, and but with Swamiji, it was always, each day was new. And for example, when he was living at Ananda village, he would live there for some months and then come to India, come to Italy. But our house was quite close to his. And so if he would be there for a couple of months, every single day he would call us at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Hello, Swamiji, would you like to come to tea? And and we knew he was going to call. And we always cleared all appointments so that 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock was free. But, oh, thank you, Swamiji. Yes, we would love to come to tea. And it could have been, okay, it's Friday again. You want to come or not? I don't know. But he would never do that. It was just always with the sense that it was the first time he had ever asked us. And then, he loved the movie Cinderella, Bambi, those two, Cinderella and Bambi. And so very often he'd ask us for tea, and then we'd come and have tea. And then at 7 o'clock, his cook, Leela, would bring in his dinner. And he'd say, hurry home and get your dinner. So we'd have to quickly throw something together. And then he'd say, would you like to come over and see Bambi? We'd seen it many times with him. But, oh, yes, Swami, we'd love to see Bambi. And, maybe we didn't want to see Bambi that night. But there was something underlying it of the courtesy, timelessness, living in the eternal now. It was every day was new. And I think life grinds us down and, okay, we're coming home. My wife will be there, my son will be there, and he'll make dinner, and he'll have problems with school. And we are, but to say, I get to come home and see my family again tonight, and I get to see my friends. And it's a new opportunity, because I had a friend a wonderful devotee, and she and her husband were both very fine devotees. And one day they had a disagreement, and he was a jogger, and he was going to go out for a run. And they kind of had sharp words, and he left and slammed the door. And then while he was out running, he had a heart attack and died. And she just said, we had such a wonderful life together, but my last words with him were harsh. And we never know. We never know if it's our last day to be with someone. And so just to treasure that God has come to you. And that's Swami's legacy to all of us. We knew we didn't have a lot of time with him. We knew he traveled. He had a lot of commitments. He was older and his health wasn't that good. So every time we were with him was a treasure. And that was his legacy, to interact with everyone that way. It's always a treasure. It's always a gift. And anyway, just to try to realize that not to take people for granted, even though if you see them every single day of your life, but just say, this is a gift. God's coming to me as my friend, as my son, as my mother, whatever it might be. And to see God in that person, and respecting other people helps you to do that. I wanted to mention too, and then I think maybe we have to close, just a little, someone told me about a remarkable, we both watched this video on YouTube, and you can find it, it's called Diablo the Black Leopard. And it's a true story of this black leopard that was born, I think, in captivity in a zoo. And it had been mistreated and abused as just a small animal, and it became ferocious. No one could, and it's all on video, it's amazing. It would attack the keepers. They tried to feed, they had to, really have many different protective barriers to feed it, because he would attack the people bringing food. And they were going to destroy it because he was so violent and he had hurt many of the trainers. And they heard about, it was in a zoo in Berlin, I think. And they heard about an animal park in South Africa where they took care of abused big cats that had either been wounded or maltreated. And they said, this is a very problem animal, to the man who ran it. Do you think? And he said, I'll give it a try. So they brought this cat in, the leopard. His name was Diablo, which means devil in Spanish. And they had him in, he had a small little cage, but then it opened up the back and he had like a big area he could walk around. But he never left, he just sat in that little cage. And then once, and it showed the man, he would go and he'd play with these big lions and tigers, and they really loved him. And so the first time he tried to make contact, the animal attacked him and he had to go to the hospital. And so he didn't know what to do. And then someone said, there is an animal psychic, and she can communicate with animals. And so they showed this whole scene. It just took a few minutes when this young woman came. And I don't know how she developed this ability, just instinctive. But at first it showed the Diablo, and his eyes were so filled with hatred and fire. It was scary, even though he was behind in a cage. And this woman just sat next to the cage, and in a few minutes she started laughing. She started laughing. And she said, "Oh, what a magnificent creature you are." And you could see, really, over a few seconds, the fire of hatred went out of his eyes. And she just said, this is a magnificent being who no one has understood. He's actually a very wise being. And he doesn't like his name. He doesn't want to be called Diablo, the devil. And so they changed his name to Spirit. And then she just said, he will be fine. He just needed someone to feel who he was. And then she went away. Really, it was like 5 minutes. And that afternoon, he came out of his cage. He began walking around in the forested area. It's really an amazing thing, just the power of respecting even a ferocious animal and how it transformed him.
She also said a couple of other things that were very interesting. She said that one of the reasons that he was so ferocious is that he was a very, very strong and powerful being, and everybody was trying to make him behave the way they wanted him to behave, and he refused to do it. He just was centered in himself. And then another thing that she said, and the man who had the animal park, he wasn't quite sure about this whole thing, you know. He thought, well, I can see the change of behavior, but I'm not sure what's going on here. But the woman said to him, Spirit, this animal wants to know what happened to the other 2 little cubs that were next to him in the zoo. And the man said, at that time, he realized that there was some communication going on, because there were 2 other little cubs that were in the cage next to him in the Berlin Zoo, and I think he knew about them or found out about them. But at any rate, it is a remarkable story. So we're over time, so okay. Thank you all.